Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. As you all can already guess by now that this is the painting that we are going to create together, and I'm going to tell you the exact step-by-step process of creating this. No need to worry if you're exact beginner in watercolor painting. This painting is extremely beginner friendly, and I'm going to tell you the step-by-step process of creating it. So without wasting any time, let's get started with today's tutorial. So hello everyone, to begin with, what we need to do right now is to tape your paper right in the way that I have done on all four sides, and you have to use a masking tape to the 1/3 of the paper, keeping 2/3 for the sky and 1/3 area for the sea. And you have to take up a conveniently big size brush compared to the size of the paper and some clean water to start with. Dip your brush into water and cover this upper portion of the paper completely with water. Not only once, try to repeat the process twice or thrice. Go for some horizontal movements of the brush and try to go for some vertical movements of the brush as well, so that you can evenly spread the water all around the paper like this. Once you can see the entire paper is completely filled up with water, the entire upper half, you need to take up some cobalt blue color with which we are going to do some clouds in the sky. For doing the clouds, I'll preferably use a slightly smaller size brush. I am using this size 2 of brush stroke right now. All the material list are given in the description box below. I am using a cold press watercolor paper 300 GSM of brush stroke. And this is the cobalt blue color that I am using. You can see the consistency of the color is quite on the watery side like this. Put some extra water like this on your palette and try to dilute your paint like this very nicely. And once you have the complete paint in your brush just like this, get rid of the extra water in this way and just start by adding some clouds. So we can add some clouds, and you can just use your imagination, or you can just take inspiration from any other painting if you feel like, or you can take inspiration from any other photographs. So I'm just going very randomly with the clouds. This is a not very detailed version of the clouds, but it gives us a very nice feel in our painting just like this. Try to keep this white areas intact in between. That gives us a very nice feel in our painting. And try to keep the lower half, like this portion, this lower half, slightly lighter in shade. If you feel like, just like I am feeling, the upper half is not dark enough, it is looking really light, I would mix a little bit more of cobalt blue color and go for a second round of tone like this on the upper half, with a slightly darker version of the same color, which is the cobalt blue color. And if you're not happy with the color either, you can just mix a reddish version of the color. It might be vermilion or it might be crimson with the cobalt blue, and apply it in this way. That also works really nicely. But if you're an absolute beginner in watercolor, I would try and tell you that preferably go for only one single tone of color. No need to go for this kind of color mixtures and second layers. Try to follow just the first layer. Otherwise, there might be watermarks coming up. Just like this, your sky is going to look like. If there are any hard edges like this that are visible, just use some color and some water and make it look really smooth like this, and wait for the upper half to slightly dry off. I'm just pausing the video for a moment so that this area can completely dry off. You can just wait for 5 minutes or so, or you can quickly use a hair dryer to dry the upper portion completely up. Now that this portion has dried off completely, it took me around 5 minutes to dry off the entire thing. So after that, do not remove this masking tape for now. We are going to make a small piece of land along the horizon line right now. And since we have the masking tape in place, we can easily draw out the island over here. And what is going to be, this lower half is going to have a correct edge. The color is not going to leak down. So what we can do, we have to take up a very small size brush like this, the size 0 of Raphael, or you can use the size 0 of brush stroke as well. So the thing is that if you're confident enough to draw the island directly with the brush, then you are good to go. I'm going to draw it directly with the brush. But in case if you're not feeling confident to do it directly with the brush, preferably you might be wanting to draw it with very lightly with a pencil before you can move with the watercolors. So right now, what color we must be using? So whenever we see something that is very far from our eyes, we often notice it is slightly in the bluish tone. It looks slightly in a bluish tone. You will notice this thing very easily around seas, in mountains, where you can see a lot of things along the horizon line. So what we need to do, we need to take up some cobalt blue color once again, but this time I would prefer take more amount of color and slightly less amount of water, but make sure you have a slightly watery consistency, not a much watery consistency this time. And I would try and start doing this island along the, you can say not through the center, slightly away from the center, somewhere over here. I'll try to draw the island like this. Okay, you see the upper structures should be rough, should be edgy, so it should look like rocks like this. Okay, take some burnt sienna color along with this. So if you're mixing the burnt sienna color with the cobalt blue, you should get a slightly dark brownish kind of a mixture, which you can use over here like this. You can see the color changing into brown, and since both the mixtures are wet, they are mixing very easily. The brown and the cobalt blue. You can use burnt sienna or burnt umber. I prefer the burnt sienna more. Like this. Try to continue. Just try to observe my brush strokes, the ups and downs on the upper edges. That's very important. I'll take a little bit of cobalt blue once again, and I'll just add a little bit of bluish tone just in the middle like this. So that will create an illusion as if we are looking into a piece of land which is quite far from our eyes, and we can just get the essence of the brownish tone, and it had mixed into the bluish tone because it is very far away from our eyes. Okay, I just lighten up few portions like this with the help of a wet brush to increase the depth and feel and the ups and downs in the rocks much more clearly, just like this. And then it's the right time we can remove off this masking tape over here. Try to pull it away from the paper just like I'm doing. Now that you don't have the masking tape over here, you need to be very careful with the horizon line. So how we are gonna do? Because the sky, you will often see the upper portion looking darker. As it moves towards the horizon, it goes lighter. In the ocean or in the sea, it happens in the opposite way. This portion will look darker, and as it moves towards the horizon line, this portion would be lighter. So I will take up a medium sized brush, maybe this size 2 of brush stroke would be doing perfectly. I would apply a slight bit of water over here. Try to be very careful along the horizon line, and only one coat of water would do perfectly. No need to add a lot of water like we used to do in the sky portion. And I will take up some cobalt blue color once again, but this time I would start applying the color from the lower half like this, like this, like this. Now I would completely wash off my brush, and with some clean water in my brush, I'll try to drag the color till the upper horizon line like this, making the color look very light, and you will form a very smooth gradient in the water like this. If you are somehow not very happy with the gradient, you might add on some extra color and make the gradient look even more smoother this time. And I would also like to do another thing in the gradient. With some cobalt blue color, I would try to add a little bit of extra color at the extreme lower half of the gradient like this. Okay, now once again we have to wait for some time to get this lower half completely dried off before we can come up with some subject that is going to fill up the area of the painting. So let's wait for some time, or you can use some hair dryer like I said, and I'm pausing the video for a while until and unless this paper gets dried off. Now this portion is completely dried off, and right now I would just ask all of you to preferably take up a pencil, and take up a pencil which is very light. And if you're having a pencil of like 2B or 4B pencil, then you have to use it very lightly so that the marks are not visible after you have colored it out. So I'm trying to make a rock over here. So I'm just drawing it out very, very lightly. It might not be visible in the video. Okay, but it needs to be visible just to you. No need to be like, it should be very, very light. You can see it is hardly visible in the video for that reason. So I'm making an arch over here. I'm trying to draw it slightly dark, in a dark version, so that it is visible to all of you. But you try to draw it as lightly as possible so it is visible only to you for the moment. Like this, and it is connected to over here, and this portion is connected to this portion like this. Okay, so this is how I'm going to make an arch over here and a rock on the upper side. So let's color it out so that you all can see it even more clearly. Just two things to mention: that keep a little bit of space over here, and this arch should be somewhere that the horizon line should be visible through the arch. It is not necessary to do it in this way, but this way the composition would be forming in such a way that it is going to look very beautiful. And the second thing is that try to restrict this rock till the 1/3 of the paper, somewhere over here. Don't go till the middle of the paper. The composition is not going to look that much good if you go till the center of the paper. Try to restrict yourself at the 1/3 of the paper approximately. Now that we are done, we can take up some burnt sienna color as well as cobalt blue. I would start off with the burnt sienna color mixed with the cobalt blue, like we have done over here. It will give you a, let me show you the mixture. It will give you a burnt umber kind of a tone looking like this. More of burnt sienna and less of cobalt blue. And then I'll start off from here, painting our rock over here. Just observe my brush movement. There should be ups and downs in the brush movement. That's very, very important. Like this. Give a little bit extra ups and downs like this. Okay. Mix some extra cobalt blue at some areas just to make the color look different like this. Okay. Sometimes mix some extra burnt sienna to make the color look different, maybe like this. But they should be slightly watery because you can see that all of them are mixing all together. There is no harsh brush mark over here. Try to avoid brush mark as much as possible. Like this. Even the side edges are rough. I'm trying to give some ups and downs with my brush. This is the arch area. Try to be very careful with the brush while you are doing the arch area. Like this. Use a small size brush. It will be very, very easy for you to do with a small size brush like this. Okay. I'll try to continue on this side. Right now I'm using more of burnt sienna and extremely less amount of cobalt blue. But as we go to the darker side on this side, I'll try to increase the amount of cobalt blue like this. Try to be very careful along the arch, like I said. Now slightly the inner portion of the arch would also be visible. So for that we need to get this area dried off at first, then we can go for such intricate detailings. Okay, I try to make this part a little bit more perfect. Like this. And I'll try to add another rock over here. Maybe like this. Try to go above the horizon line. That's a very important thing. This much size of the rock is fine. Like this and like this. Now this is one side of the painting. We have some kind of object right now. We'll go into the detailings of the object and also the reflections of the object as well. So before that, what we can do, we need to do another object in this painting. That might be because we are dealing with the sea over here. That might be a small boat going in the sea. That's a very common object that we can use over here. So once again, take up your pencil. Make sure you use a very, very light pencil right now. and I'll make an extremely small boat somewhere over here. Okay, so not bigger than this size. Okay, and the upper portion of the boat like this. I don't know it is very clearly visible in the video or not, because I'm trying to draw it very lightly. I just suggest all of you to draw it very lightly as well, so that you can only see it. So this much amount of boat is fine, no need to make it a lot bigger or something. A small boat would do. And we will try to paint the boat. And the boat is also a wooden structure. The similar painting structures that we have used over here can be used in here, but I will try to use a slightly different kind of a color. So preferably I will mix some cobalt blue once again with some vermilion. You will get a dark purple kind of a tone because it is standing against light, this boat. So it is going to be a silhouette kind of a thing, very dark silhouette. And we would try to paint it like this. Use an extremely fine brush. If you're having miniature brushes, that's even more preferable in these situations. I'm using the size 0 brush of brush stroke over here, like this. But I would just suggest all of you to switch to smaller size brushes like this in such areas. These are brushstroke Kolinsky series brushes. Like I said, all the material links I'll just give in the description box below, but I'm still mentioning the names. I would also try to paint this portion like this, maybe like this. You must be wondering what to do in the middle portion, so that I will tell you. Initially, let's keep it like this, and with some colors, with some, preferably I would use the mixture of burnt sienna and cobalt blue. More of cobalt blue, less of burnt sienna this time. And with that, I will try to draw out some shadows or reflections over here like this. No need to go very dark with the reflections because this piece of land is quite far away from our eyes. Just try to keep one thing in mind: there should be a little bit of gap in between the land and the reflection that you are trying to draw right now, like this. Try to play around with thin and thick strokes. Like you can see, sometimes the strokes are thicker, sometimes the strokes that I'm using are quite thinner. So that is one thing you have to keep in mind. No need to go for a lot of strokes over here. This much amount of strokes would do for the reflection in the water, like this. Now we can come back to our boat. But before coming back to our boat, I'll try to work out on the reflections over here as well, so that you can feel how the reflections would vary with the distance. So since this portion is quite close to our eyes, I'd preferably take a slightly bigger size brush, preferably the size 0 of brush stroke. And with the similar color that we have used, you can use the mixture of either cobalt blue and vermilion, or you can use the mixture of cobalt blue and burnt sienna, the cobalt blue being the dominant color in the mixture. I am using cobalt blue and vermilion mixture for this area. Try to focus on the brush strokes more rather than the color. The brush strokes plays a very vital role when you are trying to draw out any reflections in water. Like this. Try to focus at the edges. They are never straight. They should go up and down like this. The stroke should be extremely vertical, like this. Similarly on this side. This side the shadows would be slightly lighter, or the reflection would be slightly lighter, because the source of light is on this side is darker. That's how you have painted the scene. You can imagine in your mind whichever side you want to make it darker, whichever side you want to make it lighter. That's completely up to you. So like this. And also we have these rocks over here, like this, maybe one or two strokes, like this. And then some continuation lines, because after this arch is completed, this shadow or this reflection should fall over here as well. So that is why some lines like this. Okay. Okay, some dot like structures making the shadow or the reflection look even more realistic, like this. And maybe a little bit of line over here as well, like this. Okay, now like I said, we should work on this portion a little bit, giving it an arch like shape, because I'll show you with the help of this small masking tape that I'm having in my hand. If it is an arch, the inside portion of the arch should be visible over here. So for that we need a very dark color. I would preferably use the cobalt blue and vermilion mixture once again, but this time not so watery, and it should look a little bit rigid like this, not so watery. And with this extremely dark non-watery mixture, I would like to apply some strokes over here, which is kind of dark. Like this. Okay, you can feel the 3D thing is coming up as we are adding this kind of a stroke which is extremely dark. The 3D feel in the arch is coming up, otherwise it was looking very 2D. Okay, I hope you all can understand what I'm trying to say. And in case if you're facing any kind of difficulties, if you're having any kind of questions, because this is not a live session, I'm recording it. So in case if you're having any kind of a question or anything like that, feel free to drop in a comment below. I'll try to help you out with your questions. So not only this part, I'll try to apply a little bit of maybe grass or something on the upper half of the rock. I'll just preferably switch to a even more smaller size brush, something like this for this task, and maybe a little bit of a small bush or something growing on the upper portion of this rock of this kind, like this. Okay, just tiny datlings, nothing much, like this. And maybe you can add some strokes in the these areas, just to give it a feel that it is a rocky area. That kind of effect it will add. No need to overdo these things, but a little bit of it always helps. With slightly dry brush, same over here, I'll just add a little bit of strokes like this with a slightly dry brush. The color is not very important. You can use brownish, bluish, and whatever tones you have used over here, whatever tone you feel like, you can add on over here. Okay, now we can go back to the boat. For the boat, I will slightly take up the color blue and burnt sienna mixed together, and I will try to blur out a certain portion over here, just like this. Okay, now take up some water in your brush and use the water to dilute the paint on this side, just like this. Okay, so that it looks blurred out. There is a thin piece of cloth over there, and with the mixture of cobalt blue and vermilion, once again I'll try to add a little bit of detail in the boat, less like this, making this portion look slightly darker, adding smaller details over here, maybe over here like this, or maybe with an even more smaller brush, what you can do is add on few lines like this, or like this, or maybe on this side you can add lines like this or like this. Along with that, you can add a few humans over here, few people who are in the boat like this, maybe one over here like this, maybe another one over here like this. 3 of them is good enough for the scene. Now what we can do with the same mixture, we need to add some reflections in the water. But before adding some reflection, you will often observe this one thing: whenever we have a shadow or reflection closest to the object, that portion is really dark. So we need to mix up a extremely dark color which is even darker than the color that we have mixed right now. For that, we will mix 3 of the colors together. One is going to be cobalt blue. Along with that, we are going to mix some vermilion. Along with that, we are going to mix some burnt sienna. Once you mix these colors together in almost equal proportion, you will notice a very dark color coming up. So I'll also mix the 3 colors together right now. So as you see, I have some cobalt blue color over here. So I'm mixing the color like this, adding some vermilion to it. You are going to get a purplish kind of a tone. And with this purplish kind of a tone, I'm going to mix some burnt sienna. You are going to get a color which is very similar to black. Now we don't use black directly in watercolor painting, so try to avoid black color in watercolor painting. And right now I'm going to add this very dark color over here, the area very close to the object, over here similarly, and over here similarly. Like this. Do not apply too much on this lower half, only to the areas which is closest to the object. And I would preferably switch from here to an even more smaller size brush with the same color and apply some shadows or reflections in the water very close to the boat right now, like this. Like this. Okay, so once you are done with this, we need to add some water ripples with just the normal cobalt blue color. You can take the normal cobalt blue color, not mixed with anything right now, and a size 0 brush of brush stroke, and add some lines over here like this and like this. The water ripples we are trying to add. Don't make the water ripples too dark. It should not mix up with the shadows. The water ripples are completely different from the shadows. So try to make the water ripples very light compared to the shadows. You can see I am making them very lightly, not anywhere related to the shadows. And you can also feel that it is extremely light. A watery version of cobalt blue being the perfect mixture, like this. This portion doesn't look dark enough yet, so I will try and apply a little bit of depth with the color of the shadow over here. Now what we can do, we can add a little bit of highlight in the boat with the help of some white color. I don't prefer using white color in watercolor much, but over here I might add a slightest bit of it. But before that, I feel the color of the boat, if you just notice that it is not looking dark enough. So similarly with the color of the shadow, I prefer to add a little bit of depth in the boat as well, like this. Try to be careful and use a small size brush. I'm using the Kolinsky series brushes of brush stroke. These are miniature brushes which you can use for such areas, like this. And also I would just slightly add depth to this portion. Try to focus while you are painting this kind of areas. Don't try to rush ever. Try to go extremely slow, and you will come up with a really perfect painting. You will be really happy about that, like this. Now time for some white color. With a tiny brush and some slightest bit of white color in it, we will try to add some highlight to this portion over here, like this. And I feel one thing is missing out in the painting right now, that is some birds. some in this kind of a scenery, the birds really helps us to see and make it look even more better. So slight amount of birds always helps, so I'll preferably add a little bit of birds in this empty area. You will notice even when I'm trying to draw out the birds, I try to think of the birds. Like, don't make three of the birds of the same size or some kind of, they're all flying in the one direction. Don't need to go in that way. Try to make different size of birds. Maybe one bigger, one slightly smaller like this, and maybe one flying in a different direction like this. Try to always take inspirations from nature like this. Maybe these two birds are quite close. This bird is slightly far away. Maybe another one is flying with this bird like this, extremely small and far away. And maybe few are flying in this direction over here, slightly bigger like this. Okay, and maybe another one like this, and maybe one or two extremely small ones like this, or maybe like this. So you can see we can bring out variety in the birds as well. So no need to always go for all the birds flying in one direction or that kind of things, and it will make your painting looking a lot more enhanced, lot more professional, and lot more realistic. You'll be really happy about your painting looking that much natural. So I guess that's all that I needed to show in this painting. Nothing more to do in this painting. I hope all of you enjoyed creating this painting with me. In case if you have any doubts or questions regarding the painting, feel free to drop me a comment. I'll surely try to answer all your questions, and also let me know if you like this painting and what kind of paintings you like to see over here in kind of tutorials. Let me know in the comment section below. If you like our tutorials, whether it be mandala or watercolor, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and tell me about your views in the comment section below. And I'll see you next week with another new tutorial. And let me show you the entire painting before I stop the video. I'll just remove of the masking tape for now, slowly. Always try to remove of the masking tape away from your paper like this. These are washi tapes that I have used, but you can use normal masking tapes as well. They do equally good. So this is how the final piece looks like. So that's it everyone. Bye for today. I'll see you next week with another new tutorial.